I think we're all very familiar now with what Trump has been doing. And today, in a different segment, we'll be actually walking through the last 2 weeks of terrible governance. But I want to talk about with one of the things that left a lot of people shocked and horrified, the why. And that is the way that Trump has dealt with this horrific and devastating plane crash in Washington, D.C. at Reagan National Airport, leaving 67 people dead. And Trump's reaction to it, for those of us who are familiar with him, in a sense, it's not surprising that he jumped into action making all these baseless claims about DEI being to blame and Buttigieg and Biden. When Biden's in power, it's Biden's fault. When Trump's in power, it's Biden's fault. And some people were surprised. We weren't surprised in that we know he will stoop to those levels, but there was a level of shock to it, to actually experience what we know he's capable of and the callousness and maliciousness that came along with it. But I think we do need to learn from this moment because it's a part of a broader intentional effort by him that we're going to be experiencing all throughout the presidency. So let's just go ahead and call it out now. This clip we haven't yet reviewed. I'm going to play it for you and then go through some of the stuff we have looked at and then make the point that I'm referring to. And here is Trump making light of this tragedy. While you watch, if you appreciate the show, please do click the subscribe button.
Families of the victims of the plane crash.
I don't want to comment on that.
Do you have a plan to go visit the site or meet with any of the
I have a
first
plan
responders?
to visit, not the site, because you tell me what's the site? The water?
Or to meet with the first responders down there?
I don't have a plan to do that, but I will be meeting with some people that were very badly hurt with their family member, obviously. But I'll be meeting with some of the families, yeah.
So if you didn't hear, because there was some noise, he gets asked, are you going to go visit the site? Which would mean the airport, maybe go talk to first responders. And he says, the site? What do you mean the site? The water? Do you want me to go swimming? That's a joke. He's making a joke in response to a question about him visiting the site of this incident. No, not in the water, but you realize there are a bunch of first responders there engaging in recovery efforts and investigations. And that was the standard that MAGA had. You could say whatever you wanted about the Democratic response to something if they hadn't yet visited the site. Do you remember East Palestine? If Biden isn't there the day after it happens, then he doesn't care. And it's not a standard I find rational, but that's the standard that they've set. And then to remind you, before making the point that I want to, of some of the other things we've gone over this week as he's reacted to a mass death event.
You can't have regular people doing that job. They won't be able to do it. But we'll restore faith in American air travel. I'll have more to say about that. I do want to point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA.
So he did a bunch of that. And at another point, he said, quote, hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes pouring into our country. USA Today had a good article walking through these claims and just looking at FAA documents and seeing if he's correct or not. FAA policies say this is wrong. Air traffic controllers must regularly meet specific medical standards and must be cleared by a flight surgeon, according to FAA documents. Those who fail to meet them are disqualified from the job. And to go further, one of the conditions referenced by Trump, epilepsy, is specifically mentioned as disqualifying in the FAA documents. Controllers also must pass a hearing test and have 20/20 or better vision in each eye with or without corrective lenses for objects at long distances and 20/40 or better vision in each eye at a distance of 16 inches. Additionally, they must have no history of bipolar disorder. Okay, it continues. You get the point. And the DEI claims went on and on and on, but I've already addressed that throughout this week. He even swore while talking about Pete Buttigieg.
The FAA, which is overseen by Secretary Pete Buttigieg, a real winner. That guy's a real winner. Do you know how badly everything's run since he's run this Department of Transportation? He's a disaster. He was a disaster as a mayor. He ran his city into the ground, and he's a disaster now. He's just got a good line of bullshit.
While people are, at that point in time, quite literally waiting to hear if it was one of their family members who died, he's talking about Pete Buttigieg's bullshit while he's the president of the United States and he's brought forward no evidence to substantiate his claims, which is a part of what's icky and nasty about even engaging in these discussions. Is almost by fact checking it, we're playing into his game, because now the discussion's about at least debating his claim, as if it's even reasonable to bring it up, as if because federal government institutions have implemented diversity initiatives that also require qualifications, and he can't even make a direct connection to the incident here, but is desperate to, as if that makes it acceptable for him to make this so political. I'll remind you of Pete Buttigieg's response: despicable. As families grieve, Trump should be leading, not lying. We put safety first, drove down close calls, grew air traffic control, and had 0 commercial airline crash fatalities out of millions of flights on our watch. President Trump now oversees the military and the FAA. One of his first acts was to fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped keep our skies safe. Time for the president to show actual leadership and explain what he will do to prevent this from happening again. And we keep getting more reports. I've said before, this is not about definitively casting blame, but instead contextualizing the claims that Trump is making. The Daily Beast now reports that Trump administration emails air traffic controllers, quit your jobs. This was after, I will note, but a strange decision to make in the wake of an obvious indication that we're understaffed. That's long been a problem, by the way. Predating Trump, long been a problem. Air traffic controllers were emailed by the Trump administration urging them to quit their jobs and take mass buyouts just 24 hours after the DC plane crash. This seems to be, and is a part of the hundreds of thousands of federal workers he's trying to push out of the federal workforce so that he can only have loyalists. But it seems to be a particularly irrational act in the wake of what we saw. Not that more staff could necessarily were waiting for the investigation to figure that out. May have just been one instance of a wrong decision being made or technical problem or something. We don't know. So I'm not making claims on that. But you'd think that already having a long-standing problem of not having enough air traffic controllers who are overworked, and seeing the recent airplane disasters, you would be going in the other direction. But he's of course not. So what does he do? DEI. Ed Krasenstein made a good point. East Palestine train derailment, 0 deaths, 0 major injuries, yet Republicans and Fox News relentlessly attacked Biden for months over his delayed visit. DC plane crash, worst U.S. aviation disaster in 25 years, 67 dead, yet Republicans and Fox News have no issue with Trump vacationing in Florida instead of visiting the crash site, and Trump, I should add to this graphic, making a joke about it. What, am I going to go swimming? Really? Okay, so I said I have a point that's more than just condemning this sort of politicization and disgusting rhetoric from Trump in the wake of such a tragedy. And that brings us to the broader strategy. We're going to see this on everything. And it is playing on the fundamental truth that your eyes can only be looking at one thing at one time, that your eyes can only be focused on one thing in a moment. And so what the Republican Party does so well Sometimes Democrats are guilty of this too. But what the Republican Party does professionally at a level you just haven't seen before is keep people's eyes on everything but the most consequential things that would justify abandoning that party's agenda. And taking it away from Trump for a moment, the Republican governor of West Virginia, Patrick Morrisey, exhibits that perfectly by saying, hey, I'm doing the DEI stuff too. And it's particularly absurd given what I'll tell you after this.
Fellow West Virginians, several weeks ago, I came to you during my inaugural address to talk about how we needed to eradicate the woke virus in the schools. We emphasized the importance of getting rid of DEI at a West Virginia state government. The very next day, I issued a series of executive orders, one of which was to eliminate DEI out of state government. I directed my cabinet officials, agency heads, and others, and any entity receiving state resources to take steps to eliminate DEI. This is important for a lot of different reasons. I'm a believer, like many of you, that...
So right now it's DEI. At one point, the obsession was drag queens. At one point, the obsession was CRT. At one point, the obsession was political correctness and then woke. And then there's always the little buzzwords and the boogeyman. And this is what we have to call out and look out for, which is that if you really, and this is what I would ask MAGA voters to do, jot down, separate from watching television or reading about the news, just jot down to yourself on a little notepad, in order of most importance in your life to least importance, different issues, right? Your job, your family, the safety of your community. Do a list. Number one, if you're at all rational, what you'll find is drag queens will be really low on your list. I promise. And then every day when you turn on Fox News or you turn on whatever it is, or you open up Breitbart, or compare what you're being told you care about to what you jotted down. I know, if you're being honest, your economic well-being, your Social Security benefits, etc., is more important to you, if you were really honest, than DEI in your local university. It's not that it isn't a thing or couldn't be a debate, but just compare. What is Trump doing on the issues I care about the most? And if I feel satisfied on those, I'll go lower down the list and get to eventually woke or whatever. Because as West Virginia citizens are suffering in so many ways, their education system is one of the worst in the country. Their infrastructure is ranked as one of the worst in the country, almost always between 48 and 50 on everything I'm listing here. Some of the worst poverty in the country, one of the worst healthcare systems in the country. Should I go on? And one administration after another, and one, set of local Republicans after another, picks the latest buzzword to use their term to keep the eye on something other than the ball. Right now, he's fighting the woke virus and DEI, which is essentially going to do nothing. He's going to do nothing that's consequential. But at least we owned the libs. And 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years pass by, and they just shift the term and they shift the boogeyman. But the education system's not getting better. The infrastructure system's not getting better. The poverty rates aren't getting better. Their healthcare outcomes aren't better. Please notice, worst poverty rate states: Mississippi, Louisiana, New Mexico, West Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Tennessee. New Mexico is the only blue state in that. So if they're failing you, not that governance is the only thing, there's also systemic, long-standing problems that date back not because of a particular politician, but clearly they're failing. And you keep choosing the same people to fail you over and over again. And so with Trump, just look out for it, because he's going to get a lot louder about DEI when there's a tragedy that people's eyes are on. So they will put their eyes somewhere else. He's going to get a lot louder about probably DEI again, or about radical left communists when his tariffs are spiking their prices. When his tax cuts for the rich start being reported on and we realize, oh my gosh, these are hurting the working class and benefiting the wealthiest among us. When his deregulation makes your air less clean and your water less drinkable. When his cutting of the federal workforce makes it more of a nightmare to interact with the IRS, more of a nightmare to interact with the post office. Your education gets worse. You lose funding. When a food assistance is gutted because of federal funds being frozen, because we want to freeze all funds to make sure none of this assistance is going to woke initiatives like food. When his mass deportations contribute to his tariff spike in prices, he's gonna start saying something that's unrelated to that. And there's gonna be a boogeyman. Maybe they'll bring back up the migrant caravans are coming. Maybe they'll bring back up that the drag queens are going in and they're urinating in urinals, or they're going to women's, I don't know which one. Maybe the trans panic's gonna pump up again. But just go back to that list. What is he doing on the things that matter to you the most? You told me you cared about eggs. Focus on the eggs. And it's not, I say again, that the things that are lower down the list and how consequential they are don't matter. It's that you should first go check Trump's doing really good stuff on all the top things that matter the most, which you won't get there. But let's say he did, then you would focus on this. But because these are going to be so bad, you should keep your eye on that, because you're going to try to bring your eyes somewhere else. And that's what this whole DEI new obsession is about. Again, it was CRT before, and it's been wokeness, it's trans about every other week, and it's bathrooms, and it's this, it's that. So that's what this is about. We have to look out for. And given the current stakes, I do invite you to stick around, even though the segment's going pretty long. But Vivek Ramaswamy posted, the first step to improving U.S. education is to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education and return the money. After that, it's up to the states to lead the way. And we will. Okay, so everyone just please listen. Listen with your ears. Hear with your mind. What? Yeah, try it. He says, let's read it again. The first step to improving education is to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education and return the money. That would be funneling money. If we returned the money, that would be funneling money from red states back to the states that were funding them, which is blue states. Depicted as follows. It is red states having their education system most subsidized by the federal government. Here's another depiction of this. We looked at a report about the top 15 states that rely the most on federal funding for their education system. The Department of Education funding them are all red states that voted for Donald Trump. So furries, I don't know. Is there something about cat litters in bathrooms? Is that? No, that was debunked. Shoot. Drag queen story hour, something. Because that proposal directly spits in the face of the voters who gave them the power. That would be bad. That would be bad for them first and foremost. I'm trying to help you. Now, in such an important moment, it's important to see what's going to happen with the Democratic Party. NBC News reports that Ken Martin has won the election as the next chair of the Democratic National committee, Ken Martin, the longtime leader of the state Democratic Party organization in Minnesota, will be the new Democratic National Committee chair after winning Saturday's election as his party looks to turn the page and recover from a dismal 2024. If the Democratic Party cannot turn the destruction and devastation that's coming and that's starting into massive victories in 2026 and 2028. That's all I got to say. Okay. And let's listen a little bit from Ken Martin. The fact that he's been heading up Democratic organizations, the Democratic organization in Minnesota, is a hopeful sign, given that Minnesota is one of the Democratic parties that, even with narrow victories, has done a lot of good stuff in their state. Here he is.
My friend, my brother, our fantastic chairman, Jamie Harrison, for his wonderful work. Look, to my fellow Democrats, we got punched in the mouth in November. There's no two ways about it. I'm running for DNC chair because it's time to get off the mat, to dust ourselves off and to get back in this fight. A lot of people in this country right now are going to need us to walk and chew gum at the same time, meaning we're going to have to fight the extremes of Donald Trump while we make a sharp case to families in both red states and blue states about why they should trust us with their votes. The thing is this: when the Trump agenda fails Americans, which it most certainly will and already has, we have to be there with a legitimate alternative to this chaos. You know, while Donald Trump was being sworn in, Sandra and I marched with labor leaders outside of Ebenezer Baptist Church, the home of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As we marched, in the streets of Atlanta, we sang the song, the old Union song, "Which Side Are You On?" For a pro-labor progressive like me, who is a guy who has carried a union card and organized for the labor movement throughout his life, that cuts straight to my core. For the past few nights and for these brief moments of stillness that we get these days, I keep thinking about that song. As we move through the next year, Democrats need to ask ourselves each day, whose side are we on? Which side are we on? Are we on the side of the robber baron, the ultra-wealthy billionaire, the oil and gas polluter, the union buster, or are we on the side of the American working family, the small business owner, the farmer, the immigrant, and the students?
It is going to be a crucial message, given that Trump is just getting into the, I was going to say, the word I was looking for was hot tub. I'm picturing Trump getting into the hot tub with a bunch of oligarchs, but then I almost said bathtub. Very weird image. Very, very weird. Hot tub too. So I regret all of that. But he's being really friendly, inviting into the mechanisms of power the oligarchs, the people who almost certainly do not have our interests in mind. And it is ironic, to say the least, tragic, that the movement that said we are the new version of the Republican Party that now cares about the working class is saying, hand over even more power to the most powerful among us. So what's going to be a winning message in upcoming elections? Oligarchs v. us. And Trump as the current representation of that, right? The Republican Party as the current representation of that. But what does it mean? Can it just be a message? No. We need aggressive, pro-worker messaging that is linked to actual aggressive policy, strong, powerful policy. Because I can tell you, people are gonna be looking for an alternative. When Trump does the things that he's doing, we're seeing it already. Some panic. I saw a Home Buyers Association writing Trump an email saying, please, no, not with the tariffs that apparently are starting today. And there's going to be a seeking out of an alternative. We best have a good, strong alternative waiting. Share your thoughts in the comments. Support the show. Get the members-only bonus show by clicking that join button below.